was watching. One sheriff's deputy, an Air Force veteran, saved an American flag when a recent storm knocked it down. It was all caught on security camera and now is going viral. That patriot, Clay County, Missouri Sheriff's Deputy Brandon McElroy joins me now. Brandon, thank you very much. First of all, for your service in the Air Force, but also your service in your county as well as a sheriff's deputy. You were presumably on the job, out and about, and there had been a storm. You saw something. What was your first reaction?
Well, seeing the flag down, my first reaction was to do the right thing and make sure to show its respect and pick it up off the ground.
Is that something you see frequently? Are you on the lookout for it? How did it catch your eye?
I'm not necessarily on the lookout for it, but driving that area, I've always noticed his flag pull up with the flag waving, and driving through that area that particular morning, I noticed that it was down and just had to pick it up. Did you notice
I don't know if it's a Ring doorbell system or some sort of a camera doorbell system. Did you have any idea that what you were doing could be seen or was being seen?
Honestly, no. I didn't see it, and I didn't think that it was going to be videoed the way it was, so I had no idea.
And then when did you realize it had been filmed and that a lot of people were reacting emotionally, positively, patriotically to it?
Later that day, I was actually approached by the homeowner's wife, who had found me while I was still on patrol and had thanked me for it, and said that they had saw it on their Ring camera. And of course, that was hours later after I'd already finished picking up the flag.
Mm-hmm. Sheriff, talk to us first about your service in the military.
Served 7.5 years in the United States Air Force Reserves at Whiteman Air Force Base.
And why did you decide to continue?
Security Forces member.
Security Forces member. So you took that service and continued it in your community. When you look at that flag that you still defend today, what does it mean to you?
It means a lot to me. Growing up, you're showing respect to you show your respect to the flag, and doing little things such as making sure it doesn't touch the ground, or picking it up off the ground, or just little things you can show its respect. So you try to show it every day.
Why did those little things matter so much? Because the big thing, we talk about big issues and big topics and patriotism all day long, but this kind of thing, unseen, no one was going to know anything about it other than that homeowner when they found a well-folded flag on their doorstep. Why do the small things matter so much?
It's doing the right thing when nobody's watching. It's just making sure that, even the small tasks, don't have to amount up to anything. Sometimes they do, but just doing the small tasks to make sure that you're still taking care of everything on the home front.
Brandon, what are your message to those who have been taught, indoctrinated, or their just belief is that America's not a special place, or that flag is just a cloth, that the reverence you show is unnecessary or outdated? What's your message to them?
Something as small as that cloth represents a lot in this country, whether it's the men and women that have died for it or the men and women that still wear it to this day, serving our country so we can have our freedoms that we have and enjoy the things that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Listen, my life is better because of men like you every day on our streets, protecting us and reminding us of what a special country we live in. Deputy Brandon McElroy, Sheriff's Deputy in Clay County, Missouri. Thank you very much for your service and your time on Fox and Friends this morning. We are grateful.
Thank you.
You got it, sir. Thank you. All right, Beto O'Rourke in an all-out blitz as he makes his presidential run official. We knew that all along, but he finalized it yesterday. How he's taking aim at President Trump as he tries to reclaim his star status in the Lone Star State. And in another story, it's being called the Fry Festival. Fire Festival? Light? We'll show you the chaos at another music festival. You know about the Fire Festival going sideways. It happened again, and we'll bring it to you.
President doubling down on his crackdown on illegal immigration, threatening to shut down the southern border.
We're not going to give them hundreds of billions of dollars and tell them that they're not going to use their strong immigration laws to help the United States.
We are safe because we are a city of immigrants and asylum seekers.
A prime example of what a total failure Donald Trump has been on the issue of immigration.
Democrats, stop attacking Donald Trump and go find something positive that you can actually do for the country.
A suspect has been arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping in connection with the death of a University of South Carolina student.
Fallout continues from the Mueller probe.
I completely think that they are willing to lie 100% for anything because they can't fight this president on policy.
AOC and her socialist compadres are nothing but fear-mongers.
Of the Final Four Club, and they hail from Lubbock, Texas. The Red Raiders of Texas Tech are going to the Final Four for the first time in program history.
I did it in heels. These two took a ton of practice swings, and nobody told me you have to take your jacket off. It was unfair. I demand a rematch.
I thought about saying take off your jacket.
Oh,
but
he
then
thought about it, but then he was like, yeah, but if I tell her that, she might win. So, no, I actually didn't hit one ball. But my friend who's a baseball player was watching from home, and he was like, they should have told you to take that jacket off. And I said, that's how the cheaters work. When they cheat at the game.
Okay, Ginger Rogers.
You had a nice swing,
social
though.
media.
Yeah, I tried. No, I'm just playing with you guys, honestly. You guys did a great job.
It's great to be outdoors.
I gotta let you win sometimes.
I know. That's what I said to Ed for a whole year.
Yeah,
I gotta let you win sometime.
I let him down too easy. But the president is talking about finally trying to win on the border and push back on this surge that we've seen in recent days where even a senior Democrat, the former Department of Homeland Security chief for President Barack Obama, is saying, yes, it is a crisis at the border that is different from what Democratic leaders in Congress are saying, and the president is talking about drastic action this week.
That's right. That was Jay Johnson, the DHS secretary under Barack Obama, acknowledged it's a crisis on Neil Cavuto's show. But big news from yesterday as well. The president announced and the State Department confirmed the United States will be cutting payments to El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras because the migrant crisis is out of control. Those governments not doing enough. And it's also part of the perspective that we've been sending aid, economic aid, development aid, and others to those countries for decades. And to what return on that investment? Right. And it's a big part of the bigger view of the world that he has. Why do we send all our money to other countries that then don't work, don't use the money properly, and then they send their people to us.
Their countries to come here.
To come to us as we pay their countries. So this is a punitive measure. It's not clear that it will impact policy per se, but it's another message to these countries south of our border that it's unacceptable that Mexico is a pass-through country, and that these other three countries are actually encouraging citizens often to come to the United States.
It's also a product of President Trump trying for months and months to work with Democrats to stress that this is a crisis at the border, to talk about the human trafficking, the drug trafficking, and getting absolutely no assistance from them and having no recourse, but to say, listen, I will shut down the southern border if I can't get help. I cannot overwhelm our border patrol, and I cannot put the national security of this country at risk. Trump coming in full form on Twitter as usual, saying Mexico must use its very strong immigration laws to stop the many thousands of people trying to get into the USA. Our detention areas are maxed out, and we will take no more illegals. Next step is to close the border. This will also help us with stopping the drug flow from Mexico. So he's being tough with Democrats, he's being tough with Mexico, he's being tough with Central America, and he really has no option but to do so. He made this campaign promise to people. He's very concerned about the safety and security of Americans, and I think a lot of Americans have his back on this one.
Yeah, now this is not unprecedented. Other presidents have done it. On the other hand, you have groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which usually is seen as a Republican organization, saying there could be really bad economic consequences if we shut down the border.
That's true.
Pete is a little skeptical.
Well, they're an establishment Republican-ish organization that's been in favor of open borders because of the desire for cheap labor. Very much not in support of the tougher immigration enforcement this president has done. But we had Doug Weed on the program earlier. He's a presidential historian. He points out that what the President Trump is doing here, if and when he closes the border, is not something that hasn't been done before. Take a listen.
Under LBJ in modern times, 1963, in 1969, Nixon shut the border down, and the Washington Post praised him for it. 1985, Ronald Reagan, facing a similar problem, shut the border down. He felt Mexico had to be punished, to be brought into line, and then for all purposes, the border was shut down after 9/11 by George W. Bush. President Donald Trump is a leader. He is a gutsy guy. It's why what has to be done.
I asked him which one of those was probably the closest comparison. He said Reagan in 1985. He was having a beef with Mexico, said we're going to send an even stronger signal. And Doug Weed also said, having served under 2 other presidents, he didn't believe those presidents would have had the guts to take this stance ultimately, because he's going to take heat for it.
So you think this is a tough stance for the president?
Well, I think it's yet another one. I mean, you declare an emergency. You talk about asylum laws. You talk about catch and release. You deploy the National Guard. You release funds from the DOD to build a border wall, all while Congress still wants to talk about comprehensive immigration reform, which didn't happen and would lead to amnesty. So this president has time and time again said he's committed.
Isn't the expectation that he would be tough, though? I mean, if people elected him, if they elected for 2 reasons, actually. One, that they felt he had a strong business background and they wanted, a businessman in office. And secondly, because they realized that he was the kind of guy that was outside of Washington, a Washington outsider who was going to go in and on these issues was not going to have loyalty to a political party, but was going to actually dig in his heels and get stuff done. So I think when he does this, I don't know that it's surprising to people, but I think it's very well received, because somebody has to dig. We're always calling on Republicans, dig your heels in, whether it's the national debt, whether it's taking on entitlements, whether it's border security, and they repeatedly disappoint us. It's nice to see someone in office who's not disappointing on the issue of digging his heels in.
He was elected in part in 2016 by showing strength in cracking down on illegal immigration. He's trying to show strength again on the Democratic side out in the hinterlands for 2020. You see him on the campaign trail saying quite the opposite in terms of open borders, tough borders, a different message. Beto O'Rourke is having a series of rallies this weekend as he sort of officially kicks off his campaign. Take a look at the length of his speeches at some of these rallies. In El Paso, Saturday, 35 minutes. Houston, 23 minutes. Austin, 22 minutes. Interesting because the president has been very effective at having these long events where he gives big speeches at the rallies, really whips up his crowd, gets his base excited. Here's Beto O'Rourke trying to get the left excited about his plans. Watch.
We're up against the biggest challenges of our lifetimes. Though we did not win our Senate race, we came really close. This president is using fear and division based on our differences of geography or race or ethnicity or religion to try to keep us apart. If we continue on this trajectory, we will be a democracy in name only. Are you with me?
This guy's full of talking points. You talked about the length of the speech, because how long could you go on saying, it's like a bunch of talking points strung together?
Who's going to play the Beto bro on Saturday Night Live? Like, why does he go on his tippy? Every time he talks, he's like crunching the microphone up against his mouth, up on his tippy toes with his same moves, same stuff, same cadence all the time. Maybe it's interesting at the beginning because you're like, oh, he's not using notes. He's doing this. But it's the same stuff, and the speeches get shorter because the information, the substance is quite shallow. And his argument is, we don't want borders. And he talks about immigrants, to your point. Of course we support immigrants, but he never talks about illegal immigration.
He conflates them conveniently.
He conflates them conveniently, and he thinks effectively. His bank shot, he thinks, I can win Texas. I could beat Trump in Texas, and I could deliver the presidency to the Democrats. We'll see how his thin resume survives this Democratic primary. But yesterday he launched, and we'll see what Robert Francis does.
Can we all be grateful that he wasn't standing on a countertop with his shoes on? I mean, that's just, be grateful for the small things. You got to take what you can get.
Well, you talk about whipping up the left these days, what Beto is trying to do on the campaign trail. That's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been doing as a freshman Democrat in the House of Representatives. But when she gets out there sometimes, she occasionally gets a little ahead of the skis, came out a couple of nights ago and claimed that Congress amended the Constitution to stop FDR from being reelected, even though that amendment process happened after she said it did. Listen to her and we'll give you the facts.
When our party was boldest, the time of the New Deal, the Great Society, the Civil Rights Act, and so on, we had and carried supermajorities in the House, in the Senate. We carried the presidency. They had to amend the Constitution of the United States to make sure Roosevelt did not get reelected. And there were so many extraordinary things that were happening in that time that were uniting working people.
Extra might be a good word, because it turns out when you look at the facts, April 12th, 1945, FDR died. March 24th, 1947, Congress approved the 22nd Amendment.
Oh, 2 years later.
2 years later,
okay,
after he died. So it did not prevent his re-election. And in February 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution.
So, of course, there were a lot of
facts are little.
Well, yeah, Yeah, there are a lot of people that felt like maybe we shouldn't elect presidents for 4 terms. George Washington set a historic precedent by only serving 2 terms. Maybe we should stick to that. Let's go back to that. So you can.
So she's right that FDR being in there for consecutive terms in general got this movement going, but
That's
to
not
say
what
it
she said,
prevented
though.
him from being reelected is not what happened.
Yeah, and it's also an important point because she's so overconfident because she's used to not being challenged and she's used to most in media supporting her, and she gets to say, oh, they just don't like me. No, the issue a lot of people have with you is that some of the stuff you say makes no sense. It makes no sense. The Green New Deal you put out makes no sense. Take some responsibility. And if you're going to talk about historical context, you got to get it right or you're going to be held to account if you want to be taken seriously.
I kind of like what she said. I say we unite the working people, we amend the Constitution, allow for 3 or 4 terms, and then Trump can run again in 2024.
Oh, so this is about Donald Trump, right?
Yeah, like if she thought that was a bad move, I'm all in. Let's amend the Constitution and see if Trump can get a third term.
4 or 5 terms?
5, 6, 7, whatever.
Whatever.
You know, maybe we can partner on that. Tweet me, AOC.
What do you think about that? Friends at FoxNews.com. Is Pete getting a little carried away?
Yeah, maybe a little.
Hey, if it's in the Constitution.
All right, we got some headlines for you guys. We start with a heart-wrenching story. This man, Nathaniel Rowland, is charged with kidnapping and killing a South Carolina college student. Police say Samantha Josephson got into the car Rowland was driving Friday morning, thinking it was her Uber. Hunters found her body hours later in the woods near her home. Police spotted the Chevy Impala and found blood in the car. Josephson was a senior at the University of South Carolina. We're learning more about the final moments aboard the crashed Ethiopian Airlines flight that killed 157 people. The Wall Street Journal reports one of the pilots frantically said, quote, pitch up, as the Boeing 737 MAX plane dove to the ground. Officials believe a faulty flight control feature is to blame, but there is no official cause yet. 737 MAX planes remain grounded. Chilling video of an American tourist being brutally beaten in Australia in a seemingly random attack. Police say the victim was followed after getting off a tram. He was beaten unconscious, woke up, and then beaten unconscious again. The victim was rushed to the hospital with bleeding in his brain and a broken jaw. Police are looking for the attacker. A music festival in Florida goes so poorly it's being dubbed Fire Festival 2. 55,000 concertgoers stranded, forced to walk 4 miles after organizers failed to book enough buses to transport everyone. You might remember the original Fire Festival. Attendees were stranded in the Bahamas with little to no food or water.
That was the gourmet food from the Fire Festival.
You got to see that documentary. If you haven't seen it already, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
If you buy it hook, line, and sinker, you walk.
Not as good as Pete's documentary. Tonight,
That's
8
good.
p.m. Eastern.
Well, nothing is.
Thank you, Ed. All right, well, collusion, delusion. New numbers show Democrats just can't accept that President Trump did not collude with Russia. So why can't they accept it? Former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer is on deck to answer that question.
Plus, a little girl asked her daddy at Disney to sing, and he did it. And oh boy, this moment now going viral.
For Mr. Barr to quickly issue a 4-page report in his attempt to try and exonerate President Trump has too much of the odor of political expediency.
We don't need you interpreting for us. It was condescending. It was arrogant.
Chuck and Nancy, the Mueller report finding no collusion, but tell that to Democrats. A new poll reveals that 59%, almost 6 in 10 of them, refused to accept the no collusion conclusion.
Well, here to weigh in, former White House Press Secretary and America First Action Senior Advisor, Mr. Sean Spicer. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ed.
It seems
How
like
are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to have you here. It seems like Democrats went from collusion, couldn't prove that. Let's go to obstruction. Now there's a cover-up. Bill Barr is a part of it.
Well, look, it's not a shocker. I mean, for 2 things. Number one, they're invested in this. This is all they have. The president's accomplished a lot when you look at what he's done with his agenda and for this country and the direction that it's gone, the economy, veterans. what he's done for Israel, all that. And the Democrats went all in on this Russia collusion thing. So now they have nowhere to go. So that makes sense politically. But second, if you think about this for a second, everywhere that Democrats get their news, this is what they've been fed. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, MSNBC, and CNN wrote over 8,500 stories, an average of 13 a day on the Mueller report and this collusion thing. When you look at the three major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, there are over 2,200 minutes of coverage dedicated to this. So for the Democrats, they went all in. The organizations and the media outlets that cover them and support them went all in on this, and now they have nowhere to go.
You know, Sean, we were saying last hour that you can't just run against Trump. You have to actually run for something. So I don't understand why Democrats don't realize that talking about constant investigations and collusion when there was no collusion at some point is going to hurt them when Americans are saying, hold on a second, what are you going to do about health care? What are you going to do about taxes? What are you going to do about immigration? And they're just not talking about that at all.
Well, right, and I think that's true, and that's what they tried to do in 2016 with Hillary Clinton. It failed, and they're trying to do that again. The problem is that they're sort of threading a needle here, which is trying to appease their base, which wants them to say that they're going to defeat Trump, to stand up to Trump, and then appealing to sort of that middle margin of voters that's going to win and decide an election that cares about accomplishments and agenda. And that's the problem that they have, is that they're so catering to that base that they've lost the ability to communicate to the middle. Mm-hmm. So from a political standpoint, as a Republican, as somebody who wants to see the president reelected, I support where they're going. But I don't think that that's a recipe for success.
You're right, and they're getting their news from one spot. You laid it out very well. Sean Spicer, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
You bet, guys.
Well, socialism is all the rage on college campuses, but what happens when you ask those students to redistribute their own GPAs to the less fortunate?
Help them. I would want to say no, straight up. I don't think that'd be a good idea. So, no, I wouldn't sacrifice my own things.
Well, look at that. Campus reform has more of the priceless reactions.
And Jed lost her mind when she saw the now viral trend of a snake massage.
Why?
So we brought some here for you, Jed, to help you conquer that.
You guys are so charitable.
Get ready for the massage.
You know what? Someone's getting in trouble. Oh, look at it. Ooh.
Time for your news by the numbers. First, $52,000. That's how much the most expensive prescription drug in the U.S. costs a month. According to GoodRx, Actimmune is used to treat a bone disease and a rare immune disorder. Next, 99 years. That's how long a Texas murder suspect was sentenced to after making a pretty bold escape from jail. The inmate and two others climbed a 20-foot barrier, cut a hole in mesh wiring, and climbed onto a roof using bed sheets. The DA says the escape charge was upgraded because of the inmate's lengthy criminal history, which is expanding. And finally, 750 pounds. That's how much this massive gator weighs. Police safely relocating the big guy from a business park area to a gator farm in Central Florida. The 12-foot reptile likely weighs about 1,000 pounds. Jed?
Oh, that's brutal. Socialism and redistributing the wealth seem to be all the rage among young people today.
How do you view the word socialism, favorably or unfavorably?
I guess I would go with favorably. I favor that over capitalism.
Socialism is more geared toward helping the people.
But what happens when you ask these same students to actually walk the walk and apply socialism to their own hard-earned GPAs?
Would you support a policy where people at the top spread the wealth and give that GPA to people at the bottom?
Help them get a better GPA?
Yeah.
I'm all for helping. I wouldn't give let me just give you some of my points.
I would want to say no, straight up.
I don't think that'd be a good idea. No, I wouldn't sacrifice my own things, sacrifice my own time to help somebody else who didn't want to make those same sacrifices.
Here with more on his interviews at Florida International University is Campus Reform's Cabot Phillips. Cabot, I love this series. Love it. Because so many college students like these ideas. It sounds great. But when it's practically applied to their own lives and they have to visualize what that would actually mean, suddenly not so great.
I think a lot of people realize it's very compassionate the idea of everyone else paying for your free college, your free health care. Not so compassionate when you're the one that's having to give up things that you've worked so hard for in the name of equality. I've been on over 100 college campuses with Leadership Institute's campus reform, and the left has really weaponized this concept of equality. But rather than equality of opportunity, which we should all want, we should all support, they want equality of outcome. And there's nothing compassionate about that. When you flip it around and help these students realize that redistributing the wealth sounds good until it actually applies to you. Hopefully we had some light bulb moments there.
I think you may have, Cabot. You went on to ask them the difference between salaries and GPAs. What did you hear?
It was very interesting. There's this idea that if anyone's successful, anyone who's wealthy, they must have gotten that way by pushing everyone else down. Listen to how they describe the difference between someone earning an income but earning a GPA is a little different. Listen to them.
Well, I feel like the difference is that you study for your grades, right? And grades often reflect how much time you spend studying. But
you gotta work pretty hard to become a millionaire.
There's some people who are in the bottom, but they really are working, and there's some people who are in the bottom and they deserve that poor GPA.
Kind of like people making money with their income?
Exactly.
This is the problem, right, Cabot? It's not the real world college. They haven't gone out, gotten that job, seen how taxes are taken out, and suddenly all their hard-earned cash vanishes, so they don't get it quite yet.
They absolutely don't, and in a way it's hard to blame them. When you're only hearing one ideology, when you're only hearing the same tired leftist, in this case socialist policies on campus, of course you're not going to think critically. And this underscores how important it is for us to teach history, teach the economic context of what socialism has actually done. The two most vehement students against socialism both said, my family actually came here from Cuba. I've seen it up close and personal. I've seen it firsthand. You can see them at the end of the video on campus reform. And many of those students don't have the historical context. This underscores just how important it is for us to teach socialism throughout history has brought death and destruction. Capitalism and free markets are the only thing that have freed people from poverty throughout time.
And guess what? The world isn't fair. You can work hard and earn a GPA and earn yourself, but you also work really hard and not have a high GPA if it doesn't cut your way. Like that's life. Wow, Cabot.
Absolutely.
Both directions. Cabot Phillips, thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
An anti-abortion film has its Twitter account suspended on opening night. Was it a mistake or another case of social media silencing conservative views? That film's co-director and one of the writers weigh in.
And this viral video of a snake massage made Jed lose her mind. So, of course, we brought some snakes here to help her conquer her fear. No. Rick is fearless. Jedediah, not so much.
Rick, what's the matter with you?
Stick with us. Watch her freak out.
This is your shot of the morning.
A dad visiting Disney World, wowing the crowd and the internet with his jaw-dropping rendition of the classic song Ave Maria.
Justin Giglello's daughter noticed the piano inside their hotel lobby and asked if he'd sing for her.
We are going to relive that incredible performance right here on Fox and Friends. Justin and his family will be here in the 9 o'clock hour. It sounded like an Italian name.
Hopefully he will tell me. Well, no, I think the way they have it in prompter is not. I feel like it's Gigliello, I want to say.
There you go.
But we will find out how to. Everybody pronounces my name wrong, so it's fine.
I have a feeling that was a very proud little daughter there.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Adorable.
Way to go, Dad.
All right, we've got some headlines for you before we meet this snake. 4 Palestinians, including 3 teenagers, are killed in violent protests along the Israel-Gaza border. Some activists threw explosives at Israeli troops, who then opened fire. Thousands gathered to mark 1 year since major protests along the Gaza Strip. Egyptian mediators are expected in Israel today to work out a peace deal. And violent protests break out in Paris for the 20th straight week. More than 30,000 protesters calling for President Emmanuel Macron to resign. Demonstrators set fires in the streets and clashed with police. Some 2020 Democratic hopefuls showing support for the woman accusing former Vice President Joe Biden of inappropriately touching her.
I believe Lucy Flores, and Joe Biden needs to give an answer.
I believe Lucy Flores. We need to live in a nation where people can hear her truth.
Nevada politician Lucy Flores says Biden made her feel, quote, uneasy, gross, and confused. after kissing her on the back of the head in 2014. A spokesperson for Biden says he does not recall the incident. An animal lover finds herself in the right place at the right time.
I gotta save a snake. Oh my God. You better thank me for the rest of your life.
Central Florida woman saves a snake whose head was stuck in a beer can. The woman just happens to run an animal rescue organization and says she just had to save the black racer. And those are your headlines.
Why don't you get a little closer?
No, I think I'm good over here.
No, right over here.
I'm over here.
Speaking of snakes, Jedediah braved holding a snake on Fox and
Its
Friends.
tongue is out.
Well, he's just trying to see what he thinks.
I just go over here.
smelling
No,
tongue.
Rick, stop.
No way.
Hold on, I think this isn't how this segment's supposed to go.
No.
This is supposed to go like we're supposed to start with something small to like ease you into this.
We were actually going to start
Let's
with
start
something
small here.
a little bit easier.
Oh, this is okay. Oh, it's a little odd, though.
Well, it's a
ease
snake
up.
neck turtle, so
I
we were going to
thought
kind
it
of
was-
ease into this.
So this is Grant Kemmerer.
Grant
Yes, sir.
Kemmerer.
See, I like a turtle, but why does it have to have a snake neck?
Well, so, but we're easing into it. We're going to get you all the way to snakes,
All right.
but going to start with this really benign,
He
easygoing
doesn't
animal.
scare me, though, because he probably can't run that fast or get to me. I noticed there's no tongue sticking out either.
No, they don't do that. They do have a very good sense of smell, but basically this long neck and head is used so when they're in the water moving along, it's a carnivorous turtle. They get close enough to a fish, bam, just lightning fast reach out and grab it.
If you don't get that snake away from Jed, she's never going to
like
get close
this.
to that
I'm
turtle.
moving all the way.
Let me move.
Oh, look at his little legs.
Yeah.
Oh,
And web
touch the
feet,
turtle.
which of course indicative of a
wow.
turtle.
I don't have to hold it.
Well, no, you don't
it's
have to.
not.
Just touch though.
No,
and what you're touching
I
right
don't know how I
here,
feel about this.
this part.
Oh, come on, it's just a shell.
It's made
You know
out of
what, Pete? Just speak for yourself.
There you go.
It's made out
Okay,
of the
it's
same
not
thing as your
bad.
fingernail and your hair. It's a
Now, he
protein
doesn't look
called
like he's
keratin.
apt to bite, right?
How old is he?
She is very old. She is. I've had her for quite a long time, and she was an adult when she came to me. She's probably a good 20 years of age.
Wow.
Okay, so now we're going to
go for it.
step it up just a little
I'm
bit.
not ready.
And
What's over there?
yep.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Oh, no. Oh,
So,
Okay.
no.
all right.
What do you mean, okay?
Well, this
Oh.
is. Get,
It seems manageable.
What, you know
What
what
is
it
this?
is?
It's
It's
a
a
legless
snake.
lizard.
Ah, there you go.
It's a legless
yeah.
lizard?
See, it makes it better now,
He
right?
read the notes.
No, you're okay. It's not really a snake.
Listen, I want no part of snakes. I want
so
no
this
part.
is a snake that you have tricked me into thinking was a lizard,
It
right?
is actually a lizard. There are a few things that distinguish it from a snake. Number one, you will see it move its eyelids. It'll close its eyes. It's movable eyelids like we do. Snakes do not. Has an external ear, which means it can hear everything that we're saying.
Oh, no.
The snake
That's
cannot.
not good. Listen
No,
to
it's
what I'm
very
saying
good.
about
It's
it.
very good. You're going to see all kinds of loving
Jedediah
things.
doesn't like you.
Stay away. Be nice.
And from this part of its body right here on down is a tail, which if it were to break away, it would regenerate or regrow.
wow.
That's
Snakes
so
cannot
cool.
do that.
So when something like this eats, does it stay whole in the belly of this little skinny
It
lizard?
does. They don't have any ability other than to eat a whole animal. Now, this animal's jaw is fused. It cannot spread it open like a snake would.
Well, that's
The
good to
snakes-
know, Pete.
Can Jedediah touch this
no,
one?
no, I'm good. I'm
You're
good.
not?
Relax. Just it's okay.
So
Wait, we've got more.
My
Our
heart
very-
is racing as
Our
it is.
very last animal. Now we touched our toes in the little shallow end here. We're going to go right into the deep end.
Oh, yeah.
With our last animal
no.
here.
I thought this was it.
No.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
That dog doesn't hunt right there.
Oh no!
I'm not getting
What is the matter with you people? Oh my gosh!
My goodness, that's on my paper.
It's a lot of snakes.
What is that?
So this is actually the same snake as what he's holding just
Are you
3
serious?
years later.
Wow.
This is a reticulated python. It's one of the largest snakes in the world. And believe it or not, she's nowhere near full grown. She'll grow her entire life.
Oh, she's
She
looking
can-
at me. She's looking at me.
Well, it's just coincidence. It's
So we've
coincidence.
read about these snake massages.
tongue's out.
Never heard of it.
What's the massage schedule for the snake? Because
No.
Jed, after the show,
Meaning that you get the snake
you put the
massages.
snake. No, the snake goes all over your body and massages you.
Well, yeah, and actually they like to pick up the body heat that we give off.
Would this
and-
just overwhelm
do
Jed?
they?
It looks
Do
bigger
they?
than
Do
yours.
they?
You want to give
No,
up some heat?
No, I can't
No?
do it. I can't even believe my
Here,
heart.
Just come over here.
I'll tell you what, yeah. Look, I got the head over here. If
I
you
think
just want
it's
to touch.
safer to be
Touch
away
the
from.
body.
Yeah,
Look at
there-
that.
it's not slimy.
I don't know if I can do it.
You can touch it. You can pet it.
She's facing her fears.
I can't do it.
Whoa, now the head's
I
over
will
here.
say the coloring is beautiful. Oh,
It
see,
is
Pete,
beautiful. It is beautiful.
I'm the scaredy cat, but yet when the,
No, I
the
would-
little head with the tongue comes, Pete runs the other way.
I would rather go on patrol in Baghdad than touch
Here's the thing, though. Snakes, reptiles in
Yeah.
general, but snakes, extremely beneficial.
No
They eat
way,
rodents.
Oh, Rick.
Rodents carry disease. It's been estimated through the course of history more people have died from diseases carried by rodents than all wars combined.
Why is it
They are
that?
useful.
Or
Snakes are
mosquitoes.
useful.
Exactly.
There you go.
Mosquitoes,
Yeah.
so You don't have to love them. You don't have to give them a big hug. You just let them do their job in peace.
Do they like affection? Are they kind?
They could care less.
Oh, they don't care.
Yeah. Which is why for some people they like it as a pet. It doesn't care if you come up and say hi. It doesn't need walked. It doesn't shed hair. Personally, I mean, this is an animal that has a big undertaking. You were going to take on something like this. That is not something that really is a pet.
Do these guys get along?
They could probably care less about each other, quite frankly.
Really? Yeah. You know, call me crazy, but I think I'd rather take the dog for a walk than have one of these.
Well, I mean, I work with lions, tigers, bears, all kinds of beautiful furry animals, but quite frankly, these guys are a lot safer, than a lot of those types of animals that I work with.
All right, Grant Cameron,
I've
you're
never been
director
so terrified, but thanks
of
for
the
coming.
Wild World of Animals. Do you want to check them out online?
Rick, you know what? Rick is the winner of this segment by far.
This is my favorite
By
day
far.
of the show.
All right, that is wild. Meanwhile, the massive college admission scandal rocking the nation, involving parents faking disabilities to get them into school. Now an actress who's been fighting for the disabled for years is speaking out. She joins us live with her mission and her message next.
And an anti-abortion film has its Twitter account temporarily suspended on opening night. Was it a mistake or another case of social media silencing conservative views? That film's co-director and one of the writers weigh in.
Are you Yes.
Are you really afraid?
No, I'm terrified. Look at that guy's coming at us.
Here comes.
Welcome back. Some quick headlines for you. Las Vegas is making Narcan easy to come by putting it in vending machines. The drug is used to reverse opioid overdoses. It's available in 3 vending machines right now. The machines will eventually add more health-related things like pregnancy tests. And your heart may be at risk of a cyber attack. Homeland Security warning that certain defibrillators from Medtronic can be hacked. Attackers can not only steal sensitive data, but interfere with the devices. Wow. Medtronic says it's working to improve its security. Jed, up to you.
Thanks, Pete. Legal proceedings ramping up in the largest college admissions scandal in the nation's history. But what's not being discussed is the impact that scandal is having on those with special needs.
To facilitate the scam, Singer counseled parents to take their children to a therapist and get a letter saying that because of purported learning disabilities or other issues, the child needed additional time to complete the ACT or the SAT.
Our next guest has spent her life fighting for the disabled and says the accused parents are a disgrace to those who truly have special needs, and she's now demanding action. Here with more is actress and advocate Haley Griff. Haley, thanks so much for being here with us today. I was so inspired by your personal story and how that weighed in on your commitment to people with disabilities and this anti-bullying campaign. Can you share with us a little bit about why this is so passionate for you personally?
Absolutely. I think that in the press in general, especially with the coverage of this case, it more so focuses on what the accused have done, but not the direct impact it's actually had on the community of people with disabilities. I think that for people with disabilities, I think that for the community of people with disabilities to get proper accommodations like extra testing time or whatnot, it's a fight I've fought my entire life, and a year ago got certified as a COPA advocate, so when special needs kids are denied them, I can actually go in and fight.
Now your story, your story though is you were bullied. I read where you had a teacher when you were younger in middle school that bullied you, that marginalized you because of your own disability. Can you speak to that a little bit and what it was like to have to recover from that experience?
Yeah, when I was in middle school, I had a teacher who brought me up in class on the first day of school and said, "Class, Haley has Tourette's, and if you become her friend, you might catch it."
Wow.
There were no laws to protect me, though.
Wow, that's incredible. I've taught school, and I can't even imagine putting a student in that position, let alone how you must have felt as a child. What about the IDEA Act? Now, you went and you made this a centerpiece for you. You wanted this to get passed for many reasons. Tell us a little bit about that and why you supported it so boldly.
Absolutely. The IDEA Act stands for Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. And unfortunately, when I was bullied, because Tourette syndrome, which is what I have, is what you call an invisible disability, which means you can't really see it. And obviously, I'm not ticking because I'm having a good day. I'm happy to be here and I'm not stressed out. But the IDEA Act not only protects people with disabilities from, quote unquote, being bullied or abused by a teacher, but it also is what a child with disabilities has to fall under in order to get an IEP, an individualized education plan. And to get an IEP and an assessment and whatnot, that's how you get accommodations. So when I heard about the college scandal, the first thing I knew was, oh no, they have pretty much used the IDEA Act in a way that is horrifying. Everything I've fought for, and with, you know, it's unfathomable. And I think one of the hardest things is that watching these parents be able to do it, I'm also watching the reactions of the people in the disability community, and these parents have stolen the very strongest thing that keeps us going, which is they've stolen a lot of hope. It's already a fight to get these.
Yeah, Haley, I want to thank you. We have to wrap on time, but I want to thank you so much for coming here and sharing your personal story and fighting so hard for something that is passionate for so many people, in light of how some of these issues have been abused by those who don't have disabilities and have taken things away from those people who actually deserve them, like extra time and whatnot. Thank you so much. I know that you have inspired so many, myself included. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. An anti-abortion film has its account suspended on opening night. Was the crew targeted over their conservative views? Well, that film's co-director and one of the writers is here, and they will weigh in.